Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the OK Grognard Show. This is Friday, June 26th, 2020, 9:30 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. As most of you are aware, we have preempted our regular programming for this weekend to bring a series of DM reviews of movies in which Ray Harryhausen was showing off his wonderful stop motion animation, or dynamation as some call it. What we have today is a DM review of 1,000,000 Years BC from 1966. What a treat. Hey there, Ink Dweller 8. Thanks for joining us from Denver, Colorado. Excellent you could be here. Thank you very much. I've got you in on the weekly drawing list from earlier this week. What we've been doing is looking at movies that Harryhausen was working in. Yesterday we did 20 Million Miles to Earth from 1957 and Mysterious Island from 1961. We did those at 9:30 a.m. Central and 5:30 p.m. Central. Today, 1,000,000 Years BC, 1966, at this 9:30 slot, and The Valley of Gwangi from 1969 will be in the 5:30 p.m. Central slot today. These are what I like to refer to as the dinosaur movies. There's been a few other movies that were produced that we haven't got to yet up until this time in 66, which include 58's Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and 1963's Jason and the Argonauts, both of which we'll do tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. Central respectively. I wanted to do the dinosaur movies today and then zip into the Sword and Sandal movies starting tomorrow. Sunday we'll be looking at The Golden Voyage of Sinbad from 1973 and Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, 1977. Those will be on Sunday. And then Monday we'll finish up this retrospective series with Clash of the Titans, 9:30 a.m. Central. That was produced in 1981 and was Harryhausen's last film. Today is 1,000,000 Years BC. Top billing went to Raquel Welch, up-and-coming star. She'd done a number of smaller movies, but also had done a little thing that sci-fi fans will know as Fantastic Voyage. It actually was scheduled to come out the same year as 1,000,000 BC in 1966, but I believe actually came out in September of 66, and 1,000,000 Years BC, due to production delays or whatever, didn't actually come out, I think, until January of 67, although it gets a 1966 release date because of early viewings, if I'm not mistaken. The interesting thing that a female actor of not a lot of prominence at that point would get top billing in a film. It definitely helped her career a great deal. In regard to roles she could then gain in the number of movies she would be cast in going forward, including several in 67, several in 68, several in 69, and on into the 70s. Her career would continue to flourish as far as movies was concerned, right on up to 1977, when it would slow down a little bit, and She would also venture into taking some roles on television series and do some other things, but she was no less the star. And her career continues through 2017. Currently, that doesn't mean she's done. She's a Chicago, Illinois native, born in 1940 in September, which means she is this year going to be 80 years old and still working. Hopefully she's doing well during the current health crisis, and we wish her all the best. But let's jump right into looking at what we have with 1 million years BC. I took some screenshots, so I looked through to try to get some highlights from the film that include moments when we can take some DMing ideas away from it. Like I say, this is one of the first big full-length dinosaur movies for Ray Harryhausen, so there's a lot of stuff in here. There's actually a pretty interesting story, and just to give a sort of a summary about it, we start off seeing the John Richardson character Tumak is part of a tribe, and let's understand the conceit here. There were, in this movie's world, dinosaurs living alongside in the same time period as early man. We have a number of different types of early man on display here, living in the same world as well. Tumak's tribe is probably an early Homo sapien and tinged with a fair amount of Neanderthal. And I was thinking back then, of course, beginning to think that these were separate species of man that never mixed, but we've learned more recently that even modern human beings have a certain amount of various other DNA from various other Neanderthals and others are coming to light, that as we sequence genes and learn more about DNA and what's in our past and what's carried forward, we're finding out that there was some mixing. And so, maybe they had some ideas that were ahead of their time. Now, of course, I'm sure they did a lot of this because of ignorance, and they did a lot of this because it made for interesting cinema in their eyes, and that's just fine. They did what they did, and they gave us what they gave us, and we're taking a look at it mainly for review purposes and to determine what we might be able to borrow for RPGs. I'll digress for a moment and talk about a game that I played long ago in a campaign that a friend of mine was running in his homebrew world, in which we went through some sort of portal and wound up in a time when there were early men, and he included dinosaurs and included megafauna, large creatures, oversized creatures, oversized examples of the ancestors of modern creatures. So it was a lot of fun. They make for good monsters. They're definitely something that you can fight, and it was kind of fun dealing with the cavemen as medieval fantasy fellows thrown back in time, if you will. It was quite interesting. But we're moving on into the into the review of the story here, so let's have a look at a little more beyond the title. 1 million years BC, 66 copyright. It was a Hammer film, so that's an interesting thing too for Harryhausen special effects created by Ray Harryhausen. To further describe this opening, they seem to want to emulate the idea that everything started with the Big Bang. There's a sort of tumultuous beginning here with all sorts of surreal depictions of how the world might have formed. Of course, there's a lot of lava and smoke and rocks, and as you can see from this image, it's all quite violent and fiery. But then eventually we get early man. In one of the opening scenes, this fella who's jumping over these fronds here has run past a warthog or a boar, a wild boar, and has coaxed it into chasing him. He's run through a gap and jumped over this suspicious looking pile of branches. The warthog follows him, leaps over, doesn't leap as far as him, and down into a pit. So this was a trap set up by this tribe. He screams victorious, and the rest of his trimates come out of hiding and come down. And then there's a bit of an argument. Who's going to go down into the pit? Well, we find out this is Tumak on the right, his father in the center, Tumak's brother on the left. There's a rivalry between the brothers. The father eventually sides with letting Tumak have the kill. He jumps down. He kills the boar in the pit. The rest of the tribe send a few down. They throw the boar up out of the pit. Tumak's father rips a tusk off of the boar. Appears as if he's going to hand it to Tumak's brother, but then turns and awards it to Tumak. A sign of respect, I guess, perhaps a sign that Tumak is the heir apparent. This rivalry will continue throughout the movie, and it plays a pretty important role in the story. And it's actually pretty well done, especially consider they have almost no language skills, or at least it's very rudimentary. They do have names, so we can grasp by what little they say who is who and who has names, and that they're able to express certain ideas about hunting and crafting, certainly about making spears, and of course make fashion clothing. When they go to leave, unfortunately, one of the elder tribesmen falls down into the pit and seemingly breaks a leg, and they leave him. They can't be bothered. They do not nurture their weak or dying elderly in the same way that later tribesmen would probably do, according to the fossil record. Now we know that even Neanderthals would had some rudimentary art and took care of their wounded, seemingly, because we can see where there were re-knit bones, things like that. And the speculation, of course, amongst archaeologists, paleontologists, is that the kinds of breaks we see would not have had time to reform if they weren't being taken care of, because how would they hunt for their own food or manage to survive without the help of other people in their community? So we suspect that even Neanderthals were not this gruesome to the injured. And yet, this is a conceit for the movie that is meant to show a certain level of the primitive nature of this particular tribe. Well, their dark cave home, of course, cooking up the boar. There is the usual type of thing you'd expect in a caveman movie, where they're all fascinated with the fire and the fact that they've got food cooking. And of course, the leader, Tumok's father, off to the right, can just sit by, knowing full well that as the chief, he'll be getting some of this food. He doesn't have to sit close and fight over scraps at any point, as the rest of them will wind up doing. A little bit later, Tumok gets into a beef with his father and his brother, and because of a perceived slight, his father exiles him, and off he goes into the wilderness. And this is when we get to see our first real actual effect. Obviously, they had to do some stunt work and whatnot to capture this warthog that they trapped, killed, and cooked, and they probably almost definitely used a taxidermied warthog or a mock-up for the kill and for the carrying it back to the cave and all that. But nevertheless, now we're getting into actual effects. This is a film effect. They're using I don't know what kind of lizard this is, but it's giant here, and they've just got him in front of a screen, the set built up in front of a screen so they can project this giant lizard and him hiding, cowering near this rock. Interestingly, they show the lizard with its mouth open, and he has the big, fat, pink tongue that you would expect a lizard of his type to have. But of course, for the filming of it, its tongue has to be long and snake-like and forked so that we can actually have him try to eat our friend Tumok here. The exile could be very short. He grabs a nearby rock, smashes the tongue, and manages to escape. He travels long way. Lucky him. He's out and about. Alexion. Don't know what kind of lizard. Clearly an adolescent Godzilla, he says. Get at the size of that tongue. No doubt. It's just crazy. I'm surprised that the radioactive breath wasn't used to destroy Tumok. He continues to wander after escaping from our adolescent Godzilla. Crosses many plains. He's crossing through this very hot area. This is the hero's journey, right? Trials by nature. But eventually he comes to this cave that seems to be a sort of mountain pass that'll help him get from one area of the world to another. We'll look at this as a sort of a transition cave. He discovers within a bunch of skulls, so obviously there is some taboo with crossing through this transition cave. He also discovers that, and it's hard to see here, let's see if I can clean it up a little by adjusting the colors. Yeah, there you go. On the left, there's an even more primitive species of man who is inhabiting this cave, who is obviously the keeper of those trophy skulls. So there he is. He's got this huge kind of tree of life thing in the center of his cave. There's an open skylight above that. Down here is this pool of water that he obviously lives off of. There are some odd fruit type bushes down underneath this skylight that have managed to grow that Tumok gained some sustenance from on his way through, but he's hiding away from this. I don't know if it's meant to be like an Australopithecus or some other even more ancient form of man. He hides and then manages to find a way out the other side without being detected. But as he's traveling out the other side, he stumbles slides down a rock outcropping and discovers that they're really, really sharp. So there's some volcanic stone out here that is incredibly sharp. That turns out to just highlight the dangers of passing from one side to the other. He also discovers these huge footprints on the ground on this side. Another scary thing for him, of course. Has he seen such things before? Well, we know he's seen a giant lizard. Now, where he comes from, there were goats, there were wild boar. These were the only creatures we saw that they were fighting where his old tribe lives. It wasn't until he crossed that sort of desert area that he ran into the giant lizard. And now, after passing under the mountains through the transition cave, he is here on the other side and seeing these giant footprints. So it's not made precisely clear whether he's ever dealt with this megafauna before. These large creatures, these potential dinosaurs. But as far as what we're shown in the movie, his old tribe was free of that sort of thing. Here he's now obviously in a lot more danger. Well, not too much past that. We see this huge, I'm going to say brontosaurus. I think that at least would have been what they called it when they created it for this movie. I'm sure we've got another bunch of names. I don't think Allosaur would be the right, because don't they have a head crest? Not even sure about that, but nevertheless, it's big, it's bulky, it moves clumsily, just as dinosaurs did in the old movies, but particularly claymation dinosaurs. But here we go with another Harryhausen spectacular moment, because some of his early shorts work included dinosaurs, and dinosaurs were something that he loved as a kid and even on into adults. There's a famous exchange between him and Ray Bradbury where they both agree that they will never grow up and they will never stop loving dinosaurs. And of course, Bradbury wrote any number of books that included dinosaurs, and the movies that Harryhausen worked on also included dinosaurs. At least the couple that we're looking at this weekend and definitely did. So he's hiding out. He's trying to avoid the giant dino. There he is there. It's moving off, but we get to see it, so we know they exist. Friendly reminder that cold-blooded giant lizards with speed buffs on heat are a good way to get the wizard to use something besides fireball. Of course, now they're just going to spam Ray of Frost instead. Well, it's true. If you let on that something is heat resistant, you're going to see them break out the cold spells for sure. Of course, it depends on the system. As a person who runs first edition AD&D primarily, those sort of considerations in metagaming aren't that big a deal, because mostly it's not as specific as that. Really, it boils more down. The metagaming often boils down more to somebody who's never run into a troll before knowing you need to burn them to finish them off because they'll regenerate otherwise. So the heat and the cold and the things like that, not huge metagaming concerns in a 1E game. Certainly undead with silver and magic weapons and that sort of thing becomes something that veteran players, even if they're playing a first level, second level character, will note as this should be common knowledge, right? But there you go. Off goes Tumak, continues to explore, and he eventually discovers an ocean. So he has reached the far reaches of the land, He's transitioned through the cave under the mountains. He's got to the far side. He's found an ocean, and there he also finds that there's another tribe. Now, this tribe is seemingly a lot less primitive, and we'll get into some of the details of that. He, however, is parched and nearly done in already from his wanderings and collapses on the edge of this beach when he sees these others. Perhaps he's just realized he's too exhausted to go any further, and perhaps he's overcome by seeing other people's. But that's when the giant tortoise comes up over the rise. So watch out for that. Fortunately, the women of this other tribe rush over to guard his body, and of course, Raquel Welch, Luana, in this movie, blows a conch shell to hopefully summon some help. And that sounding, that alarm is relayed by another down the beach. Already we've got advanced communication relative to Tumok's tribe. They come a-running. These, by the way, are in the background. These are not in the foreground. These aren't like Halloween corn stalks or something. These are like 4 or 5 feet tall, flower fauna or flora of some sort. So the other tribe comes a-running, and they all help fight against the giant tortoise. Eventually they drive it into the water. Luana's actual mate is amongst this group of warriors, and he's already becoming suspicious because of the attention she is paying Tumok, this stranger from afar. They take him back to the cave. They live a lot more cleanly than Tumok's old tribe. They have artwork on the wall that they show off. I don't see any lizards up here, but at least they avoided that faux pas. This is why we didn't know, of course. The fact that they don't have any dinosaurs on the wall is why we didn't know that dinosaurs lived when early modern man lived. And there's actually a moment where they show the tribal elder, perhaps the chief, and a chief that isn't chief because of strength, but because of knowledge, apparently, is teaching the youngsters how to paint and do art. So there's that. And there's language. Luana and her mate teach Tumok how to exchange names with one another, and they do this. At one point, he shows Tumok how to use a spear as a throwing weapon rather than just a poking weapon, which is what has been shown thus far amongst the tribes, or especially amongst Tumok's tribe. So now teaching about ranged weapons. Further, they show that they do some rudimentary agriculture. So they got that going for them too. They're obviously far more advanced than what Tumok is used to. Nevertheless, spearfishing is shown, something Tumok is fascinated with and tries his hand at as well. So these are all the tropes, the stranger in a strange land, learning about a quote-unquote advanced civilization, and finding that there's more than just brute strength. But when the dinosaur attacks, and you gotta love this, they were in the spearfishing pond nearby, and it's not said, but it kind of looks as if they were actually fish farming, as if they've somehow moved these fish into this pool near where their cave is, so that they could just go out there and spear them when they need them. So that was kind of interesting. I'm not sure if that's something we learned from the fossil record as being a real pursuit. But, you know, why not? Why not? If they're actually fishing, you would think someone would have the idea, what if it could be made easier to fish, right? What if we could keep the fish here so we could spear them when we want them? Because they must have also learned about, sure, we could kill all the fish now, but if we keep them around, eventually they spoil, right? Anywho, here comes the dinosaur. It actually gets somebody out of the pool and slams him down on the shore and has bitten him. It makes one kill. Most of them run off and some of them straggle. Some poor girl who was up in a fruit tree is trapped up there, which means Tumak, who's new, will spring into action. The only brave one, apparently. But he shames his others into jumping into action too. And so, even as he's fighting them, some of the others come and try to help. One of them, a second kill, gets ripped off the ground, even as Tumak is spearing him in the gut. And then at one point, this little shelter gets crushed down, but Tumak grabs a stake from it. And at one point, when the dinosaur charges, he sets a spear and kills the, I don't know, mini Tyrannosaurus? Some sort of large raptor? What are we calling this dinosaur here? It's a nasty one, whatever it is. Certainly that mouth full of teeth is big enough to bite off the top half of a man, right? Well, he kills it. Hooray. However, things don't go well because, sadly, Tumak challenges for the affections of Luana, and it's seen as too much of a disruption in the order here for this tribe. And so he is banished. Hey, you're not one of us anyway. You get out of here. She, being loyal to her new man, says, well, if he's gone, I'm gone too. And so the two of them go into exile. They cross the nasty, nasty world and eventually get back to the transition cave. And they try to go through there. But they wind up almost getting captured by the creature guy in there. They climb up the tree. They come out through the top, so they're in another place than what he knows. And here they run into a Triceratops. Another fun little creature. But is it nasty enough? We've already had a dinosaur fight. How good would it be just to have another one, even though it's a different dinosaur? Well, why don't we add a second dinosaur? So, if we have this, then we create a different kind of conflict, right? As a DM, we know that the same old hack and slash has to be mixed up with some other things. And we also know that what's more fun than one big monster? Well, two big monsters. So the two of those creatures then begin to fight it out as these two shelter in a cave and watch from a distance, eventually trying to escape. And we get this very cool, fun stop-motion animation, dinosaur fight. So this is a big moment in Harryhausen special effects history, because we've actually got two large dinosaurs fighting one another. A lot of fun there. Eventually, they get back to where Tumak's old tribe lives. Now, in the interim, Tumak's father almost fell off a cliff thanks to his brother. He, however, doesn't die, even though Tumak's brother has taken over the tribe. The father manages to limp his way back to the cave, and he isn't outright killed, but he's taken in. He's just kind of languishing in the back of the cave, while Tumak's brother is out and about leading hunting expeditions. And at one point, when Tumak and Luana finally arrive on the scene, they run into Tumak's brother. They have a little scuffle, and Tumak manages to put him down and injure him with a spear. And then the other tribesmen, recognizing that Tumak must be a superior being to actually still be alive and to come back and to have this woman from where, who knows, right, with him. And they see that Tumak's injured his brother and essentially beat him. So they pick him up and carry him back under Tumak's orders, back to the cave. They all go back. She's introduced. Hey, look what I found. There are other people out there. Isn't that something? There is a general malaise amongst them. They're not doing well here. But Tumak's mother gives her a fur, an invitational gift, and further shows off the collection of skulls they have. They don't do cave paintings, but this is their art collection, so she's very proud of it. Can you blame her? I mean, look at these skulls. In turn, Luana introduces them when they're on the shore of a small body of water doing some cleaning of things, introduces them to the concept of swimming. So apparently they always stayed out of the water, but now they're getting a kick out of it. Sadly, for them, it's interrupted by a pterodactyl? What are we calling this one? It seems to be some mix, right? And it attacks the group here. It winds up fighting a couple of the spearmen. Eventually, it grabs Luana and flies off with her. Tumak and another try to give chase and follow, but of course it's flying, so they're well behind. It takes Luana over to its nest where there are a couple of younglings. However, a second adult winds up getting in a fight, and notice there's water behind here. She gets dropped into the water. But again, another situation where, okay, really cool. One pterodactyl grabs her, flies off with her. Is that all we're going to get out of it? No, well, it's justified. It's feeding. Pardon me, had to sneeze there. It's feeding its young. So, that's what nature intended, right? And then what's with the second one? Interesting thing about the second one, you can kind of see it in this picture. Pardon me there. The second sneeze. Probably be a third one. See the crest on the back of the head of the first one. The second one was made without. Now, I don't know if this is meant in their eyes to represent excuse me once again, there's the third one. I don't know if this is meant to represent that there are two different types of flying dinosaur, or if they're meant to represent male and female. One would think, even in the 60s, that if they were opting to go with that conceit, that excuse me, one more time. If they were opting to go with that conceit, you would have think they would put the crest on the head of the male. Well, why is the male gathering food to feed the youngsters? You would think that would be the female conceit. But in any event, pardon me one more time. Okay. In any event, when they fight it out, she gets dropped into the body of water that is behind this nesting ridge. And so she has to be rescued from the water. But at this point, that also means false alarm. That also means that they're on the far side, so they're able to get back to the other tribe. They eventually lead the other tribe back to this tribe. There is, a tribal conflict. There is a battle between the two tribes. They go at it, but the battle is interrupted by an eruption by a nearby volcano. And I'm not cutting this off because I know how close we are to the end. Pardon me and the sneezing. So the nearby volcano erupts, and of course this ends the battle. The two tribes stop fighting and all just start fleeing. Can you blame them? You can't really. Well, there are rock slides. The ground opens up. People are falling down into the ground. And eventually most of the people escape. And soon Tumak and Luana lead the survivors off into the mountains, into another land. All right, well, before I keep sneezing my head off here, I'm going to cut this out, finish up as fast as possible. Who knows how many more there will be. I thought they'd be ending at 3. I thought that was a rule. I didn't know. In any event, we'll move that out of the way. We'll say it was a lot of fun going over this, talking about the monsters and what you can bring to your games from movies like this. Be sure and check it out. 1 Million Years BC from 1966 with special effects from Ray Harryhausen. Don't forget Harryhausen Day, June 29th, Monday, all day. Yesterday, we looked at 20 Million Miles to Earth and Mysterious Island. A lot of good monsters in Mysterious Island, of course. Today, 1 Million Years BC early on. Later, we'll be looking at the Valley of Gwangi, which was a western with dinosaurs. A mysterious valley is discovered where dinosaurs still exist in the Old West. And fun ensues. They even lasso a dinosaur at one point. That'll be interesting. Then on the weekend, tomorrow, we begin getting into the Sword and Sandal movies. Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonaut at 9:30 and 5:30 Central, respectively, will be streaming. Sunday, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. And then Monday, we'll wind it up with Clash of the Titans. So come join us for all of that. I hope you do. I want to say that I appreciate everybody who follows the channel and who has spoken up while you're here. Good to see you again, Velixion and Ink Dweller. Thank you very much. Be sure and follow the channel. If you chime in on the stream chat while you're in the channel and a follower, you'll be entered automatically into a weekly giveaway. We've been giving away entry badges to Virtual Gamehole Con. I think we're going to do the same this coming Monday for somebody from this week. Also, if you're on YouTube watching this, catching up with it, thank you very much. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Click like, maybe leave a comment. And once again, thank you, everybody. See you back here at 5:30 p.m. Central for the Valley of Gwangi. Bye-bye.